Hello, my name is S.K. Williams, and I am speaking to you on a new computer. Well, not entirely new. It is one that was purchased from a shop in town that recycles computers and reassembles them. It is ostentatiously a Lenovo ThinkPad, but it is one that was repurposed. It is, however, running the latest Windows at the time of this recording, Windows 11. My old computer had a catastrophic failure, and now I cannot boot Windows on it. I am, however, hoping that the data can be retrieved. I don't know at this time what will or won't be, if any of it can be retrieved. More than likely some of it can be, but I don't know if it will be all of it or not. I also don't know if I will get it in time to complete certain projects that I was working on. Notably, years ago I began reading the Bishop's Bible, because no one had ever done it in audio form before. And I got up to... During the project, I also included the Great Bible Psalms, and I'll explain why in a moment. But I had gotten up to 50 Great Bible Psalms and 15 chapters of the book of Genesis. Unfortunately, my house burned down and I was unable to complete that project. I decided to resume it. And I was going to reload the first 15 chapters. I wasn't rereading them, but I was going to edit the videos slightly, not make them shorter, but perhaps adjust them in a certain way and re-release them. And then after I get to the parts that I had already read, release new videos with the new works on them. Well, my new readings of them. The original plan was to release Genesis chapter 1 in its special edition format, if you will, on the first Sunday of 2025. And then, for 6 days a week, present 3 chapters of the Bishop's Bible, for a grand total of 930 chapters. There are 929 chapters in the Old Testament, if you go by how it is divided commonly, but I was going to include something else to get me to the 930. And I had actually recorded all of the book of Genesis and all of the book of Exodus in audio file, and was just beginning the animation process when my computer failed. I don't know if any of my data files truly survived. And if they did, and more than likely they did, the technician who is extracting the data for me said that he has gotten some data, so I am hopeful that at least some of it survived intact. But I don't know how much of my data from my old computer I will have, and if my audio recordings will be among them, and if they are, if I would have time to complete the animations before the new year. This, of course, is something I didn't want to occur, but it has. And I don't know what I will do, but I do know this much. I don't want to completely give up on the Bishop's Bible. I will likely, at the very least, reread the chapters, even if I've lost all of them. But it would take far longer to actually do than I had wanted. My original plan was to load Genesis and Exodus right before the new year, and that would give me approximately a month and a week well, it would give me exactly a month and a week to complete Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, and so long as I stayed ahead of the release schedule, I could read the books as I went along in that fashion. I could read 4 or 5 chapters a day, recording them, and then animating and releasing them. And of course, if something comes up and I can't record, I can make up a shortfall every once in a while. That was my original plan. But my life is being cursed for some reason, and that didn't happen. I also lost my schoolwork. I'm back in university trying to get my degree. That's gone now. I'm going to have to reconstruct that. My AI images that I had created, gone. My new animations that I've been working on, gone. My novel I've been working on, gone. A lot of things are just gone now. And it is hard, especially since I did think I have a good plan. I would present going along the H&I Me TV schedule. If you know anything about American television, which a lot of people don't, they show Star Trek. They have this block called All Star Trek that begins at 8 o'clock with the original Star Trek, goes on to 9 o'clock to The Next Generation, 10 o'clock to Deep Space Nine, 11 o'clock to Voyager, and midnight for Enterprise if you're on the Eastern Standard Time in America, or Pacific Standard Time because they delay it. Of course, if you're in Central Time or Mountain Time, it would be an hour off, with Central Time being an hour behind, whereas Mountain Time would be ostentatiously an hour ahead, or because of where the main broadcast would be. H&I shows Star Trek 6 days a week, and I thought that would be a good way of arranging it. It's rather arbitrary. I like Star Trek, but it's not really connected to the Bible, but it just gives me a nice framework. I knew it had to be 6 days a week, so why not? Me TV shows the original series of Star Trek, though, on Saturdays. So I thought that I could show my own videos when it comes to the Bible on the same basic schedule, with the Bishop's Bible being shown Sunday through Friday, 3 chapters a day, and the Bishop's Bible Psalms could be presented on Saturday. I would, of course, re-upload Psalm 1 through 50, and add 2 more, Psalm 51 and Psalm 52, for 2025. The reason for this being that I would just edit them as well, to be a bit of a completist. That was the original scheduling. And I was hoping to go back to making regular commentaries. The last 6 months, the commentaries on YouTube have been atrocious, but that's because I have been under heavy scrutiny from the powers that be there, and of course Al Gore has his vengeful wrath upon me, because I disturb Al Gore's rhythm. Still, it is a great loss, and I have had many in my life. But as Rudyard Kipling said in his marvelous poem, If you can meet with triumph and disaster, and treat those two impostors just the same, if you can bear to hear the truth you've spoken twisted by knaves to make a trap for fools, or watch the things you gave your life to broken, and stoop and build 'em up with worn-out tools, if you can make one heap of all your winnings and risk it on one turn of pitch and toss, and lose, and start again at your beginnings, and never breathe a word about your loss. If you can force your heart and nerve and sinew to serve your turn long after they are gone, and so hold on when there is nothing in you except the will, which says to them, hold on. Or if you can talk with crowds and keep your virtue, or with kings, nor lose the common touch. Then yours is the earth, and everything that's in it. And, which is more, you'll be a man, my son. I obviously extracted the portions from this, and if you read the poem, I not only skipped down to a certain point, but also skipped another point to get to a lower point. So I did cut much out of the poem, but I am focusing on the parts relevant to my own situation. And it is a situation to which mankind has faced before. A situation of loss, a situation of disaster, a situation of frustration and ruin. And I admit I let the frustration get to me this time, but I count myself fortunate. For God does still love me, my mother loves me too, and gave me this new machine as an early Christmas gift. One day early, my family tradition is to give one gift on Christmas Eve and the rest on Christmas Day. And of course, I actually don't consider it too much early, because even though I got it a day early, I'm installing things like Audacity. I just installed Audacity a few minutes before I began this recording. And I'm adjusting it so that I can actually use it. Frankly, when it comes in factory setting, it's just horrendously unusable, especially considering that Windows 11 has made things even harder, and I'm going to have to learn the system. But I don't really think I'll be getting much actual work or pleasure from this machine for a few days, so getting the basics of how it is for me right is primarily what I'm doing tonight. So I'm really not going to get it until tomorrow, if you consider it that way. So I suppose it's not yet mine from a certain point of view. I'm getting it tomorrow from a certain point of view, as old Obi-Wan Kenobi said in that movie that once was beloved but has been tarred by the hands of the mouse. Still, we have always had to deal with loss, with despair, with overcoming issues, and all of the world's great philosophers, and I include the world's religions in this because even though our culture makes a distinction between philosophy and religion, there really is no distinction. Philosophy and religion are the same thing. And I know that our culture makes a distinction, and like the old joke that you see amongst militant atheists on the internet, which goes, philosophy, questions that may not be answered. Religion, answers that may not be questioned. Science, answering the questions. Of course, lionizing science, whilst creating this distinction with philosophy being understood as asking questions, but not necessarily getting answers, but being willing to ask these questions, and religion forbidding any questions and just telling you what to believe. And that's just nonsense if you've actually read religious literature we classify as religious, because when people talk about religion today, they're talking about Christianity, and it's very obvious that Christians don't just shut their brain off and believe what their church says. If they did, there would have been no Protestant Reformation, for example. And I'm not saying that to advocate any view on the Protestant Reformation, whether it's good or bad. But it's obvious that if you read Aquinas, or if you read Ignatius of Loyola, or even the original Ignatius, the Church Father, or John Chrysostom, who is a saint, or Saint Pope Gregory the Great, or many others one can name, or even amongst Protestant circles, John Wesley, or Richard Hooker, or Alexander Campbell, the idea that Christians specifically say that you're not allowed to think for yourself, you're not allowed to question what you're told, you must just believe, it's just sheer nonsense. And it's not even just Christians. There are many Islamic thinkers who allowed people to ask questions, and who ask questions themselves about their own faith and the universe around them. And you have many brilliant Jewish thinkers who did the same. You have many brilliant Hindus or Buddhists or Shintoists And I do hope on this channel, if I am actually permitted to speak freely on the Tube of You, or on my other channels on Ramble, if you're listening to me on the Tube of You, or the Shoot of Bit, if you're listening to me on the Tube of You. I'm only making this video once, and really I'm making it as much for myself as not. I'm only making it as if it's a Tube of You video, because I don't want to make it 3 or 4 times. Still, the world's greatest philosophers and religious figures, which again I see as the same thing, our modern culture doesn't allow that, but I do, have wrestled with this very point. Indeed, if you look at texts, you will find many wonderful pieces of advice that whether you agree with everything in the religion or not, it is nevertheless something that we should consider. And one of the points that people seem not to be able to understand in the modern world, and which is why I really hate how our modern world conceptualizes religion, is that they act as if they're packaged deals. You must reject everything a religion says or accept it all, and it's rather silly. For example, if I were to cite Buddhist literature on suffering and loss, many today would find it odd because I have a lot of Christian content. Why would I promote this religion I think is not true? Well, I don't approach religion that way. And even the silly argument you hear from militant atheists about how different religions must be different because they have different gods, and it must be a different god because they have a different attribute, is oversimplifying a much more complex situation, while at the same time approaching the question rather simplistically. For example, we know Islam and Christianity don't worship the same God because different attributes mean a different God, and the Muslim God, Allah, has no son, while the Christian God does. That's idiotic. They're confusing disagreeing about God with worshipping a different God, which only works if you assume all gods are fictional, which they do, even though they never accept the burden of proof. But therein lies the point. I don't really find a topic of universal suffering, of universal loss, to be something that is alien to any of the world's religions, and I do find they all have something to say about it, be it Islamic writers or even the Quran itself, to the Theravada Buddhism, or Shinto texts from Japan, although Shinto has no specific core holy book. Tao has something to say about it as well. And of course, the Bible has much to say about it. And it is indeed a comfort to know that the book of Ecclesiastes would tell us that all in this life is vanity. We lose it all eventually anyway in death. And the book of Proverbs informs us that we should not trust in treasures, for they would fleet and vanish away, and we should not boast ourselves of tomorrow, for we know not what a day may bring forth. But it is God who brings the great comfort in life, and through perseverance we can nevertheless overcome these difficulties. As it says in the book of Hebrews, in chapter 11, verse 1, which is the real meaning of it, by the way. Hebrews 11:1 is now famous on the internet for being the biblical definition of faith, proving it that the Bible defines faith as belief without evidence. But the book of Hebrews is not a dictionary, and it's not providing a definition for the word faith, and it doesn't even define faith as believing something without evidence. It actually calls faith a form of evidence. The verse goes that faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. It does not say faith is believing something even though you have no evidence. And the point about it is regarding salvation, but it's applicable to everything else. That through confidence, we can see the outcome of our actions even before they have been realized. And incidentally, faith and confidence mean the same thing. Faith means confidence. Faith means trust. Faith does not mean believing something with no evidence. So even though I've lost a lot of material, I may or may not get it back, and if I do, I may or may not have time to load it online, I can still hope to persevere and get something online on time. And even if I don't, perhaps I can do it later or catch up. But what I do know is that I can rebuild. And I would have to rebuild. And I would have to strive to rebuild. Giving in to sorrow, which we are all guilty of from time to time, or at least most of us are, or frustration or anger, will not help us. And we ultimately shouldn't give up on our ambitions simply because hardship comes. This came at exactly the worst time. If it had come a month earlier, then I could reconstruct the data. Even if I had lost it all, it would be a rush, but I could. But a week only. And yet, here I am. That is the situation I find myself in. I don't know if I can fulfill what I wish to fulfill, but I know I can try. And so, here I am, recording my misfortune, lamenting my loss, but persevering. And so too can you in your dark times if you try. Look to your future, learn from your past, but look to your future and your goals, and always strive to attain what is best and good. For that, dear friends and listeners, is perhaps the best of all. Another thing I've lost, by the way, was my Trinity video, and here's the irony. I had finally completed my BitChute Trinity video. But it is what it is. I made a promise that I would not load to BitChute any longer until I had a Trinity video. And I will make a Trinity video because I want a Christmas video up. It will not be the deep exploration of the doctrine of the Trinity I wanted. I will hold that off to another day. But my 369th video on BitChute will instead still be about the Trinity, but will differ. I have spent too long in delay on it. And while it will not be the grand thing I had wished, it will fulfill my promise of it being a video about the Trinity. But still I persevere. Perhaps my old video survived, and even if it didn't, I can reconstruct it. And on my Ramble channel, I can load it for the 369th video there, and load it on the Shoot of Bit for some other number that divides into 3 creatively and interestingly. So while some is lost, not all is lost, and I shall persevere. I shall take my leave of you all now. Thank you. God bless, and goodbye.